I'm David Bank, and from Impact Alpha, this is an Agents of Impact podcast.
It makes much more sense to produce your own energy on the roof of your data center, your hospital, your shopping mall, office building, your house, your manufacturing plant, and so on and so forth. That electricity is cheaper. It's more resilient. You don't have to suffer the instability of the grid that you start seeing in some places of the world today, like in California these days.
That's Emmanuel Lagarrigue, the Chief Innovation Officer for Schneider Electric, the French electrical equipment giant. We spoke about decarbonized, decentralized, digitized energy and the acceleration of that trend through the COVID crisis. Let's jump right into our conversation. Welcome, Emmanuel.
Thank you, David, for having me.
You are the Chief Innovation Officer of Schneider Electric. And first I want to understand what Schneider Electric is, and then I want to understand what a Chief Innovation Officer does. So tell us what Schneider is.
Well, Schneider Electric is a large cap that is a Fortune 500 globally with 140,000 employees, $30 billion revenue, $60 billion market cap, so a large conglomerate, if you will. But we focus on two things. Number one, power systems, and number two, automation for 5 markets: data centers, buildings, homes, infrastructures, and industries.
So you would be better known in France and Europe and elsewhere than in the U.S. But I think, if we look around our homes, we're probably got a good bit of Schneider Electric equipment in our houses. Certainly
Yes.
in our utilities.
In your utilities, for sure. In large buildings, for sure. In the US, the brand we use most commonly is Square D, and I would bet, David, that there's something of Square D in your house. The fact is that when it comes to the power distribution piece of Schneider Electric, there is something of Schneider Electric in 1 out of 3 buildings in the world. It's a circuit breaker, it's a UPS, it's a controller for an automation, building automation system. In a refinery or in a data center, you would find our software controlling the power systems or the entire process sometimes.
So you build a lot of real things and sell them to a lot of real customers. And as you said, $26 billion of revenues, a major global corporation. And you are the Chief Innovation Officer. It sounds kind of 1990s. What does a Chief Innovation Officer do?
What I'm doing for a living really is to try to figure out what should be the next portfolio of businesses for the company.
Because we've all read Innovator's Dilemma, and we know that you are about to be disrupted by some up-and-coming startup.
Exactly. So what the best-in-class company in this industry is an incumbent. An incumbent has not to be disrupted. So I'm spending 75% of my time on trying to figure out what's next. What should be the next disruptions Schneider Electric should try, test, step into, before getting disrupted by others. So call it breakthrough innovation, call it disruptive innovation. You use a lot of investment, a lot of venture, a lot of joint ventures with other companies to do that. And you just try to create and figure out what's going to be the next portfolio of businesses for the company.
You are at the center of what you told me was decentralized, decarbonized, digitized electricity, which I thought was a very nifty way to wrap it all up. Just break that apart for us.
Well, let's start from the context, from the background here. The consumption of electricity in the next 20 years will triple. So we are going to consume 3 times as much electricity in 2040 as we do today. At the same time, the total consumption of energy on the planet should be relatively flat. Will grow, but not that fast. So the world is becoming much more electric. So, and where does that come from? 3 major forces. Number one, IT, data centers. We all consume more and more IT every day. There are more and more data centers everywhere on the planet. They consume a lot of electricity, especially large data centers for cloud infrastructures. In that 2040 world of electricity, well, data centers may account for 1/3 of the electricity we consume on the planet. Number one. Number two, well, you have a phenomenon that we have been observing for the last 30 years, which is the emerging middle classes in many countries. And well, as soon as you create a middle class in an emerging country, you raise the level of consumption of energy, and especially in cities, HVAC or other consumptions of energy, which are very geared toward electricity. And then, last but not least, electrification of many processes which today run on fossil fuels. And the most visible of all is going to be transportation, the electrification of transportation of cars and trucks, which probably is going to go relatively fast in the second part of this decade. Now, 3 times as much electricity consumed in 2040 as we consume today. There is no way we're going to triple the grid. To do 3 times more power plants and grid infrastructure is just not a problem of sustainability anymore. It's just like economically, it doesn't make sense. It makes much more sense to produce your own energy on the roof of your data center, your hospital, your shopping mall, office building, your house, your manufacturing plant, and so on and so forth. That electricity is cheaper. It's more resilient. You don't have to suffer the instability of the grid that you start seeing in some places of the world today, like in California these days, or in Australia. And third, well, you know what the electricity is made of. So if you have a business and you have pledged that you would decarbonize your business, well, you know that you're producing your electricity with geothermal energy or with solar, or whatever source you use, but it's yours. You're not dependent on the choices that someone else is making to produce the energy. So this is why we are talking about decentralizing, so producing your own energy, decarbonizing. You choose how carbonated you want the electricity you're going to use will be, and digitize. The only way for this to be sustainable and for this new world of electricity to work is you need a very strong digital backbone, because the grid is not going away. We will need the grid. It's just that the function of a utility will be different. The utility will not be the power supplier anymore, but the utility will be more kind of a software company that balances load and demand depending on who produces, who uploads, and who downloads energy from that grid.
And so the electric system as a whole becomes much more like almost like a internet of things, I suppose.
Yes.
A distributed system, not the old kind of centralized hub and spokes from a big power plant. And that obviously creates lots of complexity, but I imagine opportunity for a company like Schneider.
Yes, it's a very good image, a very good analogy, David. There are many similarities with the decentralization of compute in a system. And many of the disruptions we are observing or anticipating are very similar to the disruptions that the IT and the telecom industry went through 20 years ago. Yes, opportunities for Schneider Electric because, those are our customers. Buildings, homes, data centers, industries, they come to us and say, hey, Schneider Electric, I'm not happy with my current supply of energy. I feel like I'm paying too much for my electricity, or I'm tired of all those blackouts and power outages, and I need to run my business, and I want to have a reliable source of energy. Or I just signed that pledge in front of my employees, my shareholders, my customers, that I would decarbonize my operation by 2030, and my utility is still sending me fossil fuel-based electricity. So we try to solve that problem for our customers. And they come naturally to us because, again, we have been the main supplier of power system and software to manage electricity in their buildings, on their infrastructures.
Now, all of these things, though, you were doing well before you and I met last year, and we chatted about some of these same topics. Then all of a sudden this year comes a major global pandemic that shuts down much of the economy for a time, and forces a rethinking of many systems. So how did all of your future forecasting serve you well or not so well? And what do you see as this has all played out? This may have been in one of your scenarios, I don't know, but what does this kind of disruption do to your thinking and your plans?
Well, this is a scenario that few people anticipated for sure. Yes, I was concerned back in March, early April, when we realized that this was going to be a major health crisis and economic crisis. I was concerned that all that climate change agenda, that let's solve the climate emergency, that had taken a lot of momentum prior to that, in the very first months of the year, I was saying, okay, is that all gone? Because now we are going to first to take care of our healthcare system and our people, and this climate emergency will come to will become a second priority. Actually, that's not what happened. 2 data points. Number one, so to understand what was really happening, I reached out to the second largest developer of renewables in the world. So European utility, they are developing like $50 billion worth of renewable assets across the world. And I call him and ask him, hey, what do you think? Is that thing going to accelerate or slow down the energy transition? Especially taking into account that at the same time we had a price war in the oil and gas sector, and the price of oil was like at 25. I said, hey, where does it go? And his point was, well, first, oil and gas companies, especially European ones, Shell, BP, Total, are starting to look at renewable investments, investing in renewables, as something interesting, where the return over capital employed is better than drilling oil, holes in the ground, which was not the case a few months ago. So his first point was like, oh, I have new competitors now. Now I'm not alone developing renewables. I have a lot of people who are not with deep pockets, large balance sheet, who come to my. So that's going to put a price pressure downward on renewables. So there will be renewables are going to be cheaper, even cheaper than we anticipated. So actually, that was a bit counterintuitive for me. But if you follow that train of thought that he was sharing with me, it makes complete sense. So actually, that crisis and especially the oil and gas price war, just accelerated actually the energy transition. So data point number one. Data point number two. We made an experiment in Australia during the first 3 weeks of lockdown in Melbourne and in Adelaide. We have that software that can, taking into account estimated household incomes and the zip code and where your house is and a series of factors, or basically guesses where if you're ready to switch to solar energy and a power wall. So we use that software, scan the people, and people were at home. And what we've all seen in the last 3 months is that people have been investing in the house. Well, look at the results of the Home Depot. Look at how people are coming out of the cities and back into the suburbs. So people are ready to invest in the house. So we were calling those people. We were thinking we're ready for a transition to solar panels and batteries. We had a 45% success rate. So for a phone sales process, right? So in 45% of the cases, people were telling us, "Yes, I think I'm ready. If you can install it in the next 3 weeks, the business is yours."
And nothing has a 45% success
exactly,
rate.
And especially on the phone sales system.
Yes.
So we try to analyze this. So of course we said, "Oh, that we are brilliant, and our super software we are the best." No, but simply that just here again. People are investing in the house because they probably understand that at least the money that we are going to spend on vacation is probably going there. And second, they are rediscovering the house. They like it, and they say, "Well, maybe I want a more sustainable future and a more and it's a better deal for me." It's same as with businesses. It's cheaper electricity, more reliable, and on top of this, it's greener. Oh, and the third data point. Sorry,
yes.
Penetration of EVs, of electrical vehicles. In 2019, 2% of new cars in the US were electric, 3% in Europe, 5% in China. In the month of June and the month of July, on the back of people not really wanting to take public transportation anymore, and a lot of incentives coming from European governments, that 3% penetration of electric vehicles became 9%. So acceleration rather than anything else in all those trends.
So acceleration of the decarbonization trend, of the electrification trend. I think here's my data point, which was, as I understand it, the carbon emissions in 2020 will have fallen, and I guess the year is not over yet, so we'll see, and the fires in California may add something to the carbon, but the carbon emissions were going to fall something like 7 or 8%. And if you look at what people sometimes call the law of carbon, to get to zero carbon by 2050, it has to fall 7 or 8% each year. And so it took a global shutdown to get to 7%. How can we possibly get 7% every year without hopefully such drastic side effects? So the question to me is, if you say things are accelerating, do you think we can accelerate at that level and really get to zero carbon?
I think so. Of course, this 7% reduction has been brutal, and this is not something that we can hope for, because we did that basically shutting down the economy and with a lot of people losing their jobs, and this is not the purpose, right? So you want to be able to decarbonize the economy while generating growth. Now, it's possible. First, technologies that enable that decentralization, decarbonization, digitization of energy are becoming affordable, cheap. It's cheaper in many places in the US, in half of the country now, to produce your own electricity than to buy it from the grid. So you save money. Second, it's more resilient. Third, it's more sustainable. The other point here, how do you create growth? Well, we've been working a lot with European governments on that topic, especially. Well, a lot of people are losing their jobs in the travel industry, in the hospitality industry. It's relatively easy to reconvert those people into green jobs, in people who would enable that decentralization, digitization, and decarbonization of the economy. Managing a small business of installation of solar panels or EV chargers, or helping in building up the production, ramping up the production of batteries for cars. So technically and from a cost standpoint, everything is there. It's just about the business model and making it happen, and making sure that people start going over the hump in switching their car to electricity. Basically, what it will take is that the day you step into a dealership and you look left, you have that 30,000 mid-size car, gas engine, and then you look right, you have the same car, exactly the same car, electric. The electric has more autonomy, more fun to drive, and is cheaper. So that day, you just buy the electric. And that's probably in 2024.
Just to take you back to the sort of COVID disruption, you've talked about this acceleration, which I take as positive, but you've also mentioned to me there's also the acceleration of many negative trends that have also kind of come to fore. And I don't know whether there's some kind of battle of good and evil here, but there's strife around the world, disinformation, polarization, division. As a chief innovation officer, you have to take those things into account as well. It's not just techno utopia, no?
Oh yes, sir. Of course. Yes. My point is that we have seen the acceleration of many underlying trends, or many things that were going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, have happened in a matter of weeks or months. Right. So many good things. Telemedicine, acceleration of the digital transformation of many companies, the fact that we can all work from home now, and we can have a better work-life balance as soon as we're not in a lockdown situation or confined in our homes for too many weeks. So a lot of good things that will help all of us be happy and live better lives and longer lives. Now, a lot of bad things also have emerged. Inequalities. I mean, during the last 12 years, with that decade of efficiency, with a very strong dominance of the financial industry everywhere, and a very strong economic growth, we basically have created a lot of inequalities everywhere, especially in mature economies. Cybersecurity attacks, like 600% growth in cybersecurity attacks during the first 3 months of the crisis. So yeah, we have lived an acceleration of everything that was probably going to happen anyway in the next 5 years.
I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I think you're coming to us. People might think from your accent and from Schneider that you're in Paris. You're actually coming to us from Hong Kong today.
Yes,
and that leads to my question, which is, how given this context, given this acceleration, given the original strategy, how do you go about looking for that innovation now?
Yes, I'm in Hong Kong because at Schneider Electric we decided we decided 9 years ago to abolish the notion of a single headquarter. At that time, our headquarter was in Paris, France, which is still where the company is listed. And we said, no, we are a global company. We have to be, especially our executives, have to be where the action is, close to the customers, close to where the future of our company, the future people, the future managers and leaders of our company will come from. And I'm still spending a lot of time when I can travel in the Bay Area, or in Austin, or in Seattle, or in Boston.
What about Nairobi, Lagos, Sao Paulo?
Exactly. So, and then once we set that up, I said, well, maybe now I need to look at Shenzhen and Beijing and Shanghai and Hangzhou. And so I took my family and I moved to our Hong Kong headquarters for a period, and maybe I'll go somewhere else after that. Now, the interesting thing also with that pandemic, serendipity was a very important thing in innovation, right? So this is why the Silicon Valley, this is why the Bay Area is what it is, right? So it has been so successful and so much of a transforming force for the world, because very few people in a relatively small part of the planet were just changing the entire world, and you just had to be around. And to be a bit smart and to know people. So serendipity was very important. Now, I'm not saying this is the end of the Silicon Valley, not at all, right? So I think Mark Andreessen said it: don't bet against the Silicon Valley. Now, the point of being geographically in a place may be a bit less relevant for this type of innovation. So you will see emerging places, just as you said, Lagos and Lisbon. Is a very interesting place, right? So a lot of people are going to Lisbon for the quality of life, high education system, good English skills, relatively good airline communication, very strong internet communication. So, well, I can establish my business in Lisbon and be happy. And anyway, who cares? Because especially if your business is about software. I was the other day with a couple of corporate venture firms in Israel on Zoom, because Israel has been shut down, locked down for the last 4 months. The venture capital activity in Israel, so the funding of new startups in Israel, has increased over the last 6 months by almost 40%.
Through the pandemic, it's gone up, not down.
Through the pandemic, it's gone up. So everywhere else, in all the other major ecosystems, in the Bay Area or in Shenzhen or in London, you would see a decrease of money being invested in startup by 15-20%. That's what we saw. In Israel, it went up. Why? Because forever Israeli entrepreneurs have been creating companies not for their market. It's a very, very small market. So systematically, when they create a company, they do it for the US or the European market. So for them, being stuck at home was actually an opportunity, because they didn't have to fly that much. Everybody was accepting that business would be conducted on Zoom or any other video platform. And so it has sparked more activity. So I think this is something we'll see changing in terms of where innovation happens. I think it's a great news for many ecosystems which were probably not always in the center of the action.
Just to close, Emmanuel, I wanted to somehow see if you could put this in a broader context of corporate strategy now being driven by these large mega trends of the future. And that I think sometimes people think corporations, large corporations, in particular large global corporations, somehow standing in the way of this sustainable disruption, as it were, and maybe having legacy businesses in things. I mean, obviously fossil fuels, but all sorts of things. Schneider, at least from our conversations, seems to have placed its bet on the other side of that the world is actually going to change in this greener, sustainable direction, and that's a major opportunity for not only innovation, but revenue growth and corporate prosperity going forward. I don't know quite how to ask this. How much of an outlier is Schneider in the ranks of major global corporations for having that view?
Well, I think David, it's back to what we said at the beginning. It's the innovator's dilemma. So either you choose just to build the best-in-class company in your industry, you just listen to the short-term thinking of your shareholders, your people, your customers, and everything, and just live. I would say live almost by the quarter, and you can probably survive like this for a while, but it's not sustainable over time. If you don't start thinking who can disrupt you, who you can disrupt, what you can do different, if this or that business you have in your portfolio is really going to make it 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, how you really create value for your shareholders sustainably in the future.
Well, Emmanuel Lagarrigue, Chief Innovation Officer of Schneider Electric, looking out over the horizon, we look forward to chatting with you again and catching some of these trends and some of these disruptions. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, David, for having me, and see you soon.
That's going to do it for this Agents of Impact podcast. You can read more about Emmanuel and Schneider Electric at impactalpha.com. Subscribers receive full access to Impact Alpha content, including deal flow, job postings, and members-only Agents of Impact calls. Use the code BRIEFING100 to get $100 off at impactalpha.com/subscribe. Thanks to Emmanuel and our producer Isaac Silk. I'm David Bank, editor and CEO of Impact Alpha.